Alright everybody, welcome back to the channel. As this video comes out, it will be releasing on January 1st, 2024. So I just want to wish you all a happy new year, first of all. And in line with that, and on theme with the new year, I want to talk about the idea of New Year's resolutions. Now, I think that it's become quite popular in the fitness space to say that New Year's resolutions are useless and to kind of poo-poo on anyone that makes them, especially people who are more Gen Pop who maybe aren't quite into fitness yet. Now, I'm definitely guilty of this in the past, of saying, hey, why are you guys making New Year's resolutions? Why don't you just start, beginning of December? Why don't you start earlier? You can make a goal anytime. And while that's true, I think that using New Year's as an opportunity to reflect and to see where you have some areas for growth, I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that. So in this video, I want to talk about some of the ways that you can make New Year's resolutions or goals more practical and more useful for you. Now, some of the themes that I'm going to be talking about are in line with goal setting theory. My background is in health and wellness coaching, and so a lot of what we talk about is behavior change, and goal setting is a big part of behavior change. So today I want to break down a couple different examples of goals that are perhaps more or less useful when it comes to making New Year's resolutions. I'm going to give an example for sleep, for nutrition, and for training, since I think those are three pretty big areas of fitness that people tend to want to work on, and I think that they tend to have a big impact as well. So first I want to start with the idea of setting smaller versus setting bigger goals. This is something that I encourage my clients to do, is to set small goals every single week, because it can help make a big goal feel less big by having these kind of actionable steps that you can take in order to get to that bigger goal. So let's start with the example for sleep. Let's say that you have a big goal of wanting to get to bed 2 hours earlier than you currently are doing. Now, a lot of people, when it comes to New Year's resolutions, will just jump in and try to get there immediately. Now, I would encourage you to take more of a graduated or more of a measured approach. Why don't you start with half an hour? Let's say that currently you go to bed at midnight and you'd like to start going to bed at 10 o'clock. Maybe you start by going to bed at 11:30. Try that for a week. If that works, then go to 11, then go to 10:30, and then eventually within a month you've already worked your way to 10 o'clock. And it's a lot more manageable kind of taking this more stepwise approach. Let's say with nutrition, you go on this kick of I want to eat 100% whole foods. And so you try to overhaul everything all at once, and it gets really overwhelming, and you fail and you give up and you quit. Instead, maybe it would be more helpful to say, let me try to eat a fruit or a vegetable at every meal, or set a number for yourself. Let me try to eat 5 or 6 servings of fruits or vegetables throughout the day. That would be kind of a nice stepping stone to work towards that goal of having a larger percentage of your diet be made up of whole foods, instead of thinking about it in this black or white, all or nothing approach that often leads people to fail. Now, let's say with training, you've trained in the past, but you've kind of fallen off and you want to get back into training. And so oftentimes what I'll see with people is, I'm going to start going to the gym every day. I'm going to wake up early. I'm going to change all these things about my life all at one time. And again, it becomes really overwhelming for that individual. They can, willpower their way for a couple weeks, and then they end up giving up, and they give up everything entirely until the next year. And this kind of cyclical thing happens over and over. So instead of saying, okay, I want to go to the gym every single weekday and I'm going to go for an hour and a half, maybe start with 3 days a week that seem quite manageable for you based on your schedule, and say, I'm going to go in there for 45 minutes and have a plan. Then, if you are really successful with that and you're able to stick with that for a couple of weeks or even a couple of months, then maybe you add a 4th day, or instead of going for 45 minutes, you up it to an hour. There's lots of ways that you can kind of work your way up to eventually where you'd like to be without trying to jump there all at once. The next kind of goal that I'm going to talk about is a short-term goal versus a long-term goal. Let's go to sleep. So a short-term goal would be, I want to wake up by insert time this week, versus I want to become a morning person. So becoming a morning person is something that takes a long time. You can't just become a morning person overnight, but people try to do that. Instead, if you say, okay, I'm going to try to wake up by, half an hour earlier this week, you try to kind of shift that back a little bit. Eventually, over time, you start to become that person that you want to be. With nutrition, let's say that you eventually want to get to the point where you're preparing all your meals from scratch, but right now you're ordering a ton. You go to Uber Eats, you get takeout all the time, you're constantly going out, stopping to get fast food. Instead, maybe you say, okay, I'm going to start by making sure that I have some fruit with breakfast and some vegetables with dinner. Or maybe you say, I'm going to make sure that 2 out of my 3 or 4 meals every day are cooked if it's really like a situation that you don't have a grasp on right now. Or maybe you say, I'm only going to go out X number of times per week, and you try to stick to that. With training, maybe you are used to hitting certain numbers in the gym, and again, you've kind of had a layoff from training, and you say, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to hit a PR in this lift and this lift and this lift. And you try to progress faster than you should. Maybe you get hurt, and then maybe you get demoralized, discouraged, and again, you end up out of the gym. Instead, maybe it would be more beneficial to say, let me try to add a couple reps, or let me try to add 5 or 10 pounds to this lift this week and see where that gets me if I'm able to do that week after week after week. Before you know it, you're hitting all-time PRs because you've kind of let that accumulate and you've drawn it out instead of trying to get there all at once and rush your way to that. I think that's kind of the main theme, is that people try to rush their way to whatever their goals are instead of focusing on the process. And that's the last form of goal setting that I want to talk about, is setting process goals versus outcome goals. People often focus on the outcome goals without realizing the habits, the process that is going to allow them to actually get there. And ironically, focusing on the outcome, overly focusing on the outcome, leads you to not get there, whereas you focus on the process and you actually end up getting the outcome. So let's go back to these 3 examples. With sleep, let's say that your outcome goal is to improve sleep quality. Now, there's a lot of different ways you can measure this. I'm just going to leave it kind of open-ended. If you focus on the outcome goal of improving sleep quality, it doesn't actually tell you how to improve sleep quality. So maybe you say, I'm going to turn off screens an hour before I go to bed, or I'm going to make sure that my room is set to this certain temperature and it's a nice dark environment, or any other kind of sleep hygiene habits that you might want to implement. With nutrition, maybe you have this broad goal of eating healthier, eating cleaner, or improving the quality of your diet. How do you actually do that? You could say, I want a greater proportion of my meals to be meal prepped, cooked by myself, and I'm going to try to eat less ultra processed foods. That could be a goal of yours, and that would be moving you towards that goal of improving your overall diet quality without trying to completely overhaul and rush things all at once. And lastly, with training, maybe you have an outcome goal of adding 5 pounds of muscle or 10 pounds of muscle or whatever it is. Instead, maybe if you're having trouble adhering to your program, which is therefore leading to the lack of the outcome being realized, you can say, I'm just going to focus on making it to the gym all these days this week, and I'm going to perform every exercise that I have written on my program. I'm not going to skip any exercise. I'm not going to skip calves. I'm not going to skip abs. I'm not going to skip my isolation work. I'm going to try to do everything that I can in my program, and that is going to ultimately lead to that outcome of getting that 5 or that 10 pounds of muscle. Or maybe it's something like, hey, I'm going to make sure that I'm pushing myself sufficiently hard and I want to get to at least 2 reps in reserve or 1 rep in reserve, or I want to try to take some sets to failure, and you kind of use that as your metric. That is your process goal in order to lead you to that outcome. There's lots of different kind of like stepwise actions that you can find and that you can take in order to get to whatever it is that outcome is. So that's my take on New Year's resolutions and some kind of helpful hints that I hope are able to aid you as you look forward to this new year. If you need some help with your fitness goals, I do offer one-on-one online coaching. So if you're interested in that, the link will be down below to get in contact with me. If you want to, feel free to send me a DM on Instagram or to shoot me an email. Always happy to answer any questions that you guys have. Let me know if you like this kind of video, what you want to see from me in the future. And I hope that you guys are all having a wonderful start to your year. And I will talk to you in the next video.